Welcome to the online lecture on EC301 Digital Signal Processing. Myself Anila Kuriakos, Assistant Professor, Department of ECE RSET. I'll be dealing with the second part of Module 1. In the first part, you have already seen the concept of DFT, how it is derived from DTFT, a few problems, as well as the relationship of DFT with other transforms. In this section, we'll be dealing with some important properties of DFT that is used to analyze the finite duration sequences. This particular slide showcases the 10 most important properties of DFT. Now, I've organized the presentation in such a way that we'll take up each property and see its proof, and the problems that uses these properties will be done during the online sessions that we are going to conduct. The first important property of DFT is the periodicity property. Now, as the statement clearly shows, if you have a finite duration sequence called x of n, and you can see that it repeats after every capital N. In that case, the endpoint DFT of this x of n, which is given by x of k, will also repeat after every capital N. Okay, so your x of n is periodic with a period of capital N. Similarly, your x of k will also be periodic with a period of capital N. Okay. Now, the proof is very simple. It's a very straightforward proof. Let's start with x of k. We know that here we have taken it as 0 to n minus 1 because we know that the duration of your x of n is capital N. So, I need to consider only one duration. And this is the equation. Now, let's find x of k plus n, because ultimately I have to prove it is equal to x of k. So, substituting wherever k comes, substituting it by k plus n, you can see that it becomes x of n e raised to minus j. Instead of k, write it as k plus n into 2 pi by n into n. Now this exponential e raised to a plus b can be separated into the product of two exponentials, and that is what is shown here. E raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n, and then you have another term after cancelling this n and n out, you get it as e raised to minus j 2 pi n. Okay. Now we know that e raised to minus j theta can be written as cos theta minus j sin theta, and that is what is done in the next step. Here you have it as cos 2 pi n minus j sin 2 pi n, and we know that this particular term will always be 1. Cos 2 pi n is always 1 and sin 2 pi n is always going to be 0. So your answer or the equation reduces to x of n e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n, which is clearly x of k. So starting from the LHS, you have reached the RHS, and that is a proof for the periodicity property. The second property is the linearity property. Now, most of these properties should be familiar to you because you have already completed your signals and systems course. Anyway, moving on, linearity property tells you that if you have two sequences x1 of n and x2 of n, and their corresponding endpoint DFTs are x1 of k and x2 of k, then the property tells that if you have a new signal which is a combination, a linear combination of these two signals, ax1 of n plus bx2 of n, then their DFT is going to be ax1 of k plus bx2 of k. Now here there is one point that you have to note. There are two sequences x1 and x2, okay, and obviously their lengths can differ. So suppose the length of the first one is n1 and the length of the second is n2, okay. So how do you determine capital N? Capital N is the end point that you have to choose. What is the value of capital N? Now that's going to be the maximum of n1 and n2. For example, if you have a sequence with length 5 and another sequence with length 8, the maximum of these two is going to be 8. So you have to choose your capital N as 8. Okay. So your endpoint DFT will be chosen accordingly. So here A and B are real or complex valued constants. Now moving into the proof. Now this is what I have been discussing right now. If the lengths are different, then n is going to be the maximum of n1 comma n2. The proof is very simple. DFT of ax1 of n plus bx2 of n. So here single signal. Okay. So DFT of this means you are going to apply the formula of DFT on the whole signal ax1 of n plus bx2 of n. Okay. So that's into the formula, the basic formula, e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n. Okay. Now we take this inside and we consider them separately. Okay. And distributing the sigma to both the terms, you get it as, and taking the a out, you get it as a x1 of k. Here taking the b out, you get it as bx2 of k, and that is your RHS. So this is also a very directly a proof that can be proved very directly. Before moving into the next property, let's take up certain concepts that we need to be familiarized with. Now we have something called the circular time shift. Now until now we had been seeing time shifting, and that was linear time shifting. Now how is the concept of circular time shift different from the normal time shift that we used to see till now? So here, to understand that, consider the periodic extension of x of n. So suppose your x of n has got 8 samples, and that's it. Those are the 8 samples of x of n. Now we are going to take the periodic extension of it. So we can see that xp of n can be written as sigma L is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n minus Ln. Okay, where L is varying from minus infinity to infinity. So when L is equal to 0, it is your x of n. When L is equal to 1, it is x of n minus n. So after 8 samples, your signal will repeat as it is again, and so on. Okay, so we are considering the periodic extension. Now, what we are going to do is, suppose we shift this periodic sequence by k units to the right or the left. Suppose we are considering to the right because it's a delay. Okay, we get another periodic sequence called xp dash of n. So xp dash of n is the delayed version of your original periodic sequence. Okay, and that is given by xp dash of n is xp of n minus k. So it is sigma L is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n minus Ln minus k, because it's delayed by k units. Now what we do is we truncate this. That means we consider your xp dash of n only from 0 to n minus 1. Okay, that means where the original sequence was, we consider only those number of samples. So x dash of n is what I am looking at. It is xp dash of n between 0 to n minus 1, and it's 0 otherwise. Okay, so maybe you will get a better idea of this by looking at these graphs. So given the graphical representation of x of n, you have 4 samples of the given x of n, and it's from 0 to 3. Now we consider the periodic extension of this. That means this signal is now going to repeat after every 4 samples, because the length is 4. Okay, so we have the signal repeating after every 4 samples, 0, 4, minus 4, and so on. Okay, and it's repeating. Now what we do is we are going to delay this periodic signal by a value of 2. So the k in the previous slide is 2 here. So instead of starting from 0, the signal now starts from 2. So you can see that you have the signal starting from 2. Okay, and at 1 it goes to 3, 2 goes to 4, 3 goes to 5, and so on. So the whole signal gets delayed by 2 units. Okay, and at the last step we truncate the given signal from 0 to 3, because these are the original positions. So from 0 to 3 you can see that 3, 4, 1, 2. These are the samples that I get from 0 to 3. Okay, so that is this. Now what has happened? I have shifted my original signal x of n by 2 units, and it's a circular shift of 2 units. So normal time shifting would be, if it is delayed by 2 units, it would have started from 2, okay, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. Here and the values at 0 and 1 is going to be 0. So here what we can see is, it's delayed by 2 units means the one which starts at 0 is going to be at 1, at 2, which starts at 1 is going to be at 3, and the one which is at 2 will shift to 0. So it's constrained within these 4 samples and it shifts and comes back to that position. Maybe you'll understand it better when you look at this. From now on, we will be representing the given samples on a circle as equally spaced points. Okay, so here we have 4 samples, so we are going to divide our circle into 4 equally distant points and mark the samples in the anti-clockwise direction. So x of 0, x of 1, x of 2 and x of 3. Okay, so these are the values which is written inside of the circle. Now if I want to delay it by 2 units, what happens is that it's getting delayed by 2 units, so you have to shift it to the left by 2 units. Okay, so wherever x of 0 was there, now it has moved to x of 2. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's again the shifting has done or has happened anti-clockwise. And now look, if you write the samples, at 0 it is 3. Okay, at 4 at 4 you have, at 1 you have 4, at 2 you have 1, and at 3 you have 2. Okay, so this is what we mean by a circular shift. Okay, and it can be represented as x dash of n is represented as x of n minus k mod n. Okay, so and that is represented using this notation. Here, if you have a finite duration sequence x of n whose endpoint DFT is x of k, and then you circular time shift the sequence. So this is how you denote it, x of n minus L. That means you are circularly time shifting it by L units. Okay, and capital N is the endpoint DFT, and then it's given that your x of k will be multiplied by a e raised exponential term. Okay, so this is something that we have seen in the earlier concepts of signals and systems. You time shift a sequence and in the frequency domain it gets multiplied by a e raised to minus factor. Now moving into the proof of this, let's start with the LHS. DFT of x of n minus L, okay, it can be written as x of n 0 to n minus 1, x of n minus L, okay, e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n. This is the basic DFT equation. Now the first thing is we are going to divide this summation into 2 different parts. First one is from 0 to L minus 1 and the next is from L to n minus 1. Okay. Now here what we do is, we know that x of n minus L, the circular time shifting, is equal to the linear shifting by a plus n. So what I mean is, you can denote x of n minus L on the circular shift like this, as a linear time shifting using this equation. Okay, this is what we have seen in the previous representation, the graphical representation. So substituting this particular representation, that means wherever x of n minus l, that the circular L shift comes, everywhere you can replace it by x of n minus l plus n, or I can say that it is n plus capital N plus n minus l. Okay. Now let's see how the previous equation changes. Here the x of n minus l, okay, this circular time shift by L units. So we know that it can be replaced by a linear time shift as given. So the equation gets modified to this form. Here what we are going to do is, next we are going to do a substitution. Let n minus l plus n be given as m, small m. So now you have to modify the summation in such a way that you should not see a variable called small n, it should be in terms of small m. Now when I modify the summation, I have to modify its limits also. So when n is equal to 0, substituting it here, m becomes n minus l. When n is equal to l minus 1, what happens is that your m value changes to n minus 1. So the limit gets modified to n minus l to n minus 1, and this is replaced by m right now, and e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n. Small n should not be there. Instead I have to write it as m minus n plus l. Okay. So here this should have been m minus n plus l. Then where did that capital N go? Actually that n does not make any change to this equation, because even if that n was there, you will have a minus n term here. So I can take it outside. So it becomes e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into minus n. So that denominator and the numerator gets cancelled. What is left is e raised to jk 2 pi. We know it is cos 2k pi plus j sin 2k pi, and the value is 1. So that n, even if it is not written, it means the same thing. Next we take up the second part of the summation, where your n varied from L to n minus 1. Okay. So when you substitute the limits, you get the equation like this. There the only change is that you might have a difference in the limits here. You might get it as n to 2n minus 1 minus, sorry, L minus 1. You know that it's periodic with a period of capital N, so even you can subtract an n from both the limits. Okay. So you get it as two separate terms. You can see that here m is from 0 to n minus l minus 1. Here it is from n minus l to n minus 1. So combining these two, because whatever is inside the summation is the same. So I can write it as m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of m e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into m plus l. Okay. Now in that case, since the summation is in terms of m, L is a different variable, so I plan to take it outside. So it becomes e raised to minus j k 2 pi by n into L. Okay, so that is taken outside, and what is left is m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of m e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into m, and that we know is the DFT basic equation. So this is how we do the proof for circular time shifting. Now, unlike the linear time shifting properties for the previous scenarios, it was an easy derivation, but for circular time shifting, it involves much more steps. Now, a few more concepts before going into the next property. These are a few terms that you need to note. An endpoint sequence is said to be circularly even if it is symmetric about the point 0 on the circle. So if you want to say the same as an equation, it's going to be if x of n minus n is equal to x of n, then we call it as circularly even for values of small n ranging between 1 and capital N minus 1. The endpoint sequence is called circularly odd if it is antisymmetric about the point 0 on the circle. Okay. So I can write it as x of n minus n is equal to minus x of n. Now the next term is what is known as time reversal. How do I obtain time reversal of a sequence? if you are given an endpoint sequence, okay, and normally we mark everything on the anti-clockwise direction by dividing the circle into n equal points. Now here, if you wish to time reverse the sequence, that is x of minus n, okay, and that's again a circular time reversal, we are going to denote it in the circle, on the circle, but in the clockwise direction. So you have 4 points on the circle which are marked in the anti-clockwise direction. Its circular time reversed sequence will be marked on the circle in the clockwise direction. So moving on to the time reversal property. We know how time reversal is obtained. So if you have sequence marked in the anti-clockwise direction, you need to just mark it in the clockwise direction. And this is what I want in a n. It's denoted like this, okay, with a subscript of n. So I can write it like this. If x of minus n, a circular time reversal, it is equal to x of n minus n. This is something that the notation that we have already seen, okay. So anyhow, just understand that it's going to be the opposite direction when you time reverse it. So now look on to the property. If I have a finite duration sequence called x of n and its DFT, and point DFT is x of k, then DFT of circular time reverse signal x of minus n, capital N, which is the DFT of x of n minus n, is equal to x of minus k circular shifted by n, or x of n minus k. So what it means is that if your signal is reversed in the time domain, you can see that in the frequency domain also they get reversed. Okay, so that is what this particular property means. Let's move into the proof of this. I have to find the DFT of x of minus n, circular shifted, okay. Circle time reversed. So in that case, I can denote the x of minus n as x of n minus n. Now it's a mere substitution as we have seen in the previous proof also. Let we denote x of n minus n as m, okay, and then change the summation from the variable small n to small m. So when n is equal to 0, my m varies from n to 1, okay, you can just substitute it and see, and x of n minus n can be written as x of m, small n can be replaced as capital N minus m, and that is what is shown here. Now this can be written as n to 1 is same as 1 to n, x of m. This can be divided into two exponentials, multiplication of two exponentials, as I have discussed earlier. E raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into capital N will turn out to be 1. So this part will go to 1. So what is left is only e raised to jk 2 pi by n into m. Okay. So this can be written as, now this is one important step that you have to write, e raised to minus j 2 pi, here this m is replaced as it is, k is written as n minus k. Okay, now this is not going to do any harm to the equation because inserting a small capital N is just taking it as a one factor there. So it's just rephrasing this k into n minus k. Okay, and as a result of this, I can see that they are showcasing the equation for x of m e raised to minus j 2 pi by n m into n minus k. So it is not x of k anymore, it is x of n minus k. Okay, so this is the reversal, the time reverse sequence of x of k. Okay, so we have proved it indirectly. So this is how you proceed with the proof for time reversal. Now let's take up the frequency shifting property, specifying it's a circular frequency shifting property. Here, if I have x of n, which is a finite duration sequence, whose endpoint DFT is x of k, then we can see that jl 2 pi by n into n is x of k minus L, and this is the circular shift. Okay. Now here, this is the dual of the time shifting property that we have already seen, the circular time shifting property. There it was shifting in the time domain, circular shifting in the time domain, which gave a multiplication by a e raised to factor in the frequency domain. Here it's a vice versa. Here you have to multiply the time domain by a e raised to j factor, which results in a circular frequency shift of L units. Okay, the proof is pretty direct. Given DFT of x of n, it is equal to n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n. This is the basic DFT formula. Now, starting from the LHS, I want to find the DFT of x of n into e raised to jl 2 pi by n into n. Okay, as we had discussed previously also, whenever you are asked to find the DFT of a sequence, the basic equation does not change, it's just the subject that changes. So this becomes x of n e raised to jl 2 pi by n into n, okay, into our the rest of the formula. Now I can join these two exponential as a single exponential term. So it can be written as e raised to minus j into k minus l 2 pi by n into n. So for this, I can write this as, I know it is k minus l, but why can't I insert a capital N again? We are looking at it again because capital N is not making any change to this equation. It's merely a 1. So I can write this k minus l as n plus k minus l because it's not doing anything to your original equation. So this can be written as x of n plus k minus l, or this is the linear shift by or represented by n plus k minus l is equivalent to the circular shift by L units. Okay. So in most of the equations, this or inserting a n plus in any of the variables will help you reach the final answer quite easily. The next property is a complex conjugate property. Now there are two subparts to it. Here if the DFT, the endpoint DFT of x of n is denoted by x of k, then the first property says that the x conjugate n minus k. So it is the circular shifted DFT and its complex conjugate. Okay. So hope you understand. You have x of n. The complex conjugate of x of n is the circular shifted x of k and its conjugate. Similarly, the DFT of x conjugate n minus n is equal to x conjugate k. Now, to prove this, the proof is simple. We start, let's prove the first part. We start off with the LHS. DFT of x complex conjugate n is equal to the basic equation where the subject is replaced by x conjugate n. Now, taking the conjugate outside, okay, it can be written as x of n e raised to jk 2 pi by n into n, and we know how it's written because e raised to theta conjugate is e raised to minus theta. So that concept is applied here. Now, since I'm taking the conjugate sign outside, okay, it can be written as this particular e raised to jk 2 pi by n into n can be rephrased as e raised to minus j 2 pi by n into n minus k. Now this minus and this minus, it becomes plus j 2 pi by n into k, and that is what is here. Again we are inserting a capital N here because it's not changing your equation in any way, but it will help you to reach the final form of your answer. So this can be written as e raised to minus j 2 pi by n into n minus k into n. So I am looking at x of n minus k and the whole thing conjugate, and that's how I got the answer as x conjugate n minus k. Now going on with part B, okay, here let's start with the RHS. We know that IDFT of x of k is 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k e raised to j k 2 pi by n into n. That's the general formula of IDFT. Here I am trying to find the IDFT of x conjugate k. So just changing the subject there, I can write the equation as 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x conjugate k, and the rest of them is the same. Here also I want to take the conjugate outside. Therefore, I can write it as x of k e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into n. Okay. And to make it of the form that I want, I can replace this small n by capital N minus n, because it's not going to affect my equation. So I get it as 1 by n k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k e raised to j k 2 pi by n into n minus n. I am looking at, so this is my x of n minus n, okay, and the conjugate, so x conjugate n minus n. So these proofs are also pretty direct. It is the only incorporation of the capital N term in between, so that it will help you to reach the final answer comfortably. The next important or the most important property of DFT is the circular convolution property. Now here proofs can be asked, a lot of problems can be asked. Now in this particular part 2 of your presentation, we'll be dealing with only the property and the proof. The problems will be dealt in the part 3 of the presentation, and the rest of the problems will be done during the online sessions. Now circular convolution, the property says that if I have two finite duration sequences called x1 of n and x2 of n, both of them having a length capital N. Now even though they do not have the same sequence, you can make it of the same length. Okay, you find out which is the maximum. If there is n1 and n2, find out which is the maximum of the two and fix that to be the capital N and append zeros to the other. So however, at the end you will have both the sequences of the same length called capital N, and their DFTs are x1 of k and x2 of k. The circular convolution property tells you if I have the circular convolution of x1 and x2, its DFT is going to be the product of the individual DFTs. So the convolution concept is something that we have seen earlier in signals and systems with respect to the Fourier transform, discrete time Fourier transform, etc. Okay, but there you have been looking at what is known as a linear convolution. So that is different from the circular convolution that we are going to see. So what is this circular convolution? The equation seems very similar, but you can see that here the limit, you can see that a normal convolution equation is sigma, if it is x1 of n convolution x2 of n, it's going to be sigma k is equal to minus infinity to infinity x1 of k x2 of n minus k. That is a normal convolution equation. There the shift varied from minus infinity to infinity, but in our circular convolution we restrict these shift to within the circle. Okay, so within the particular number of samples. So you get it as m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x1 of m, and there it was a linear shift x2 of n minus k. Here it is going to be a circular shift x2 of n minus m. Since it's circular, it's denoted like this. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between linear convolution and the circular convolution. The limit changes and the second signal is not linearly shifted, it is circularly shifted. So the sample doesn't go out of the frame, it just gets shifted circularly. So let's start with the proof. Let's start with the RHS. We have the RHS as x1 of k into x2 of k. So let's write the equations for x1 and x2. we know that x1 of k is sigma m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x1 of m e raised to minus jk 2 pi by n into m. So since x2 of k is taken separately, let's take another variable called L. Okay, the same equation but with a different variable. Now the property says that the IDFT of x1 of k into x2 of k will give you x1 of n circular convolution x2 of n. So let's find it out. Let's start with IDFT of x1 of k into x2 of k. We know that the IDFT formula is 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 the subject into e raised to jk 2 pi by n into n. Okay, so everything else remains the same except that the subject is this whole equation. Okay, now rephrasing it, here all the e raised to terms are brought together. So it's like a complete outward summation. Inside that there is another, so it's a nested summation. The outer variable is m, inside that you have an L, and the final one is in terms of k. Okay, now the summation, you can note that the summation over k, that means this particular summation, it equals n, that means the whole summation is equals n for L is equal to n minus m. Okay, where n minus m is modulo n, and in all the other cases this summation is going to be 0. Okay, so in that case we need to consider only one case, that is when L is equal to n minus m. So the whole equation gets reduced to 1 by n sigma m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x1 of m. Now this summation need not be considered because only for a particular value of L, and that value is n minus m, this whole thing is going to have some value, or in all the other cases it's going to be 0. So I need to just consider L is equal to n minus m. So here x2 of n minus m, okay, and at that time this particular summation value is going to be n. So I can write it as so this 1 by n and this n gets cancelled off. What is left is m is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x1 of m x2 of n minus m circularly shifted. So this is what is referred to as the circular convolution. Okay, this proof is very important, and also this particular property is also very important because this can be used to process the signals very easily and efficiently. The next property is one which is very much related to the previous property. It's called the circular correlation. Here again, just like the previous one, we have two signals x of n and y of n whose endpoint DFTs are x of k and y of k. Okay, now in that case, if I am considering the correlation of these signals, so the question comes, what is correlation? So okay, Rxy of L is the correlation of two signals x and y. So how is it represented? The basic equation for correlation of two signals x of n and y of n is given as sigma n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n y conjugate of n minus L. Now that n minus L is not the linear shift, it is a circular shift. Okay, so if I perform this operation, what we get is known as the correlation or the circular correlation of two signals. Okay, so if the two signals are circularly correlated in the time domain, then the circular correlation property tells you that their DFT, it's not just multiplication, it is x of k into y conjugate k. So if the two signals are getting circularly convoluted, then it's going to be multiplication, that is x of k into y of k. And if it's going to be circularly correlated, then it is going to be, their DFTs are going to be x of k into y conjugate of k. Okay, so that is the circular correlation property. Now in that, so this is what the property tells you. Now let's move into the proof of complex correlation property. Here Rxy of L is actually the circular convolution of x of n and y conjugate of minus n. Now you will understand it when we look at the equation. We can write it as Rxy of L is actually n is equal to 0 to n minus 1, x of n, y conjugate of n minus L, the circularly shifted n minus L. Okay. So that can be written as the convolution of x of n and y conjugate of minus n. So I can write this as x of L convolution, circular convolution y star of minus L. Now we know that from the complex conjugate property, we know that x conjugate of minus n, okay, minus n means this is the circular time reversal. In that case, I can write this minus n as n minus n, okay, and we know that its DFT is x conjugate k. This is something that we have seen in the complex conjugate property. Now mark that is the first equation. Now from the circular convolution property, we know that DFT of x1 of n convolution x2 of n is x1 of k into x2 of k. So in that case, if I combine 1 and 2, I can write that the final answer or the final DFT of your complex correlation is going to be x of k into y conjugate of k, because that is what is shown here. So combining these two properties, we can come to the proof very directly within 2 steps. Now the next property is a multiplication of the two sequences. Now this is the dual property of our circular convolution property. Okay, there convolution of two signals in the time domain results in the multiplication in the frequency domain. Similarly here it's a dual of that. So multiplication in the time domain will result in the circular convolution in the frequency domain. Okay, so let's look at the property. If there are two sequences x1 of n and x2 of n and their DFTs be x1 of k and x2 of k, then multiplication of x1 and x2 will result in this. Okay, but as we have seen in the earlier cases also, the dual property need not be correctly the same. You can have additional factors, and you can see that there is a 1 by n extra multiplication factor which comes in addition to the circular convolution term. Okay, now this is the dual of the circular convolution property. Now it can be easily proved by the by just interchanging the time and the frequency variables for circular convolution property. The last property that you have to focus on in this particular section is the Parseval's theorem. Now Parseval's theorem is something that you are quite familiar from the previous portions. Now again, Parseval's theorem for DFT. Okay, so let's consider two complex their endpoint DFTs be x of k and y of k. Now the Parseval's theorem states that if I have sigma n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n into y conjugate of n, okay, that is equal to 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k into y conjugate of k. Now this is the Parseval's theorem and this is the general form of the Parseval's theorem. Now before moving into the significance of this particular theorem, how am I going to prove it? Now you can have a bigger proof for this, but it can be very easily solved from the circular correlation property. Just 2 steps you reach this answer. So how are we going to do this? Just focus on the LHS or start from the LHS. LHS sigma n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n into y conjugate of n. that is your LHS. Now I know that that is related to circular correlation. The general equation for Rxy of L is sigma n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n y conjugate of n minus L. But since that minus L factor is not there here, that means my L is 0. So that is why we have written this as Rxy of 0. Now from the complex correlation property, I know that Rxy of L is the IDFT of Rxy of k. So 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 Rxy of k e raised to jk 2 pi by n into L. This is something that I know from the complex correlation property. Now what is going to be Rxy of 0 then? It is equal to 1 by n sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 Rxy of k. Wherever this L comes, you can substitute as 0. So it becomes Rxy of k into e raised to 0, which is 1. So what is left is this. Okay. Now Rxy of k means it is written as sigma k is equal to 0 to n minus 1. Rxy of k is x of k into y conjugate of k. This is something that we have seen. So we have proved it very comfortably by within 2 steps. Okay. So this is the easiest way to prove the Parseval's theorem. Now moving into the significance of this Parseval's theorem, let's consider we have seen the 10 important properties of DFT, how or what each property states, and how can they be proved. So with that we have come to the end. The problems regarding this will be taken up during the online classes, and the most important property, the circular convolution, the problems related to that will be dealt in the third part of the presentation. Thank you so much.